Hello, you are tuning into Media Soundwave. My name is Heather Cassidy, and today I am joined by Vicki Wusche, who is she's a property investor, she's a property influencer, she's got so much information about property investment for us. And we're also with Jay Rooney here from One and All Financial, who is a financial advisor specialising in property, but there is other things as well he covers which we may bring into play later in the conversation. So guys, welcome to the show and thank you for being here today.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks for having me.
Today's point of the show is we're going to look at property investment and how to get onto the ladder and some little tips that these guys have picked up. Both of them are property investors themselves. Vicki, you do a lot of public speaking, don't you? You've got some amazing books. I recently read your book, Property Investment for the Next Generation. Absolutely blown away by it. It just makes you think about property in a different way. And I've always liked the idea of, okay, if I earn such an amount, I can then start looking at putting money into property. And I always thought, it's something I want to do, but in my head, I had a longer goal for that, whereas actually it's not so far away as what people actually think. It seemed more like a more realistic goal, and I actually might be able to do it sooner than I had previously hoped. So if I can get some of that information across to everybody else, that would be great. And anything that we miss off on the show, or we might think about extra points that we can put into a blog post that we can then point people in the right direction. So thank you very much, and I'm going to pick your brains on it. So Vicki, if somebody came to you and said, look, I want to start property investing, what would be your first thing that you would discuss with them?
I'd actually want to know why.
Okay.
Because I think sometimes people think they want to invest in property, but they've actually got no realistic expectations for it. They think it's easy. They may have watched a TV programme that sort of gives... Yeah, so I wasn't going to mention anyone, and there's that one and others that sort of give you the impression that it's easy to just go out there and make lots of money. But of course it's a TV show, so it's edited for a particular purpose. And most people who invest in property tend to watch Homes Under the Hammer and go, but they haven't costed this, they haven't costed, and there's no way it costed that. And actually, I remember doing one programme where I worked out how much they said they'd earned at the end of it, divided it by the amount of time they'd put into doing this renovation. And I think I worked it out at something like £2.50 an hour. And it was madness what they'd done. It wasn't
the amount of work that they put in, it wasn't worth it.
No. And when I actually looked at it, if we then took on the maths side of it and remortgaged the property, assuming some increase in value, they would never have enough money to make a wage out of it. They could only ever pull money out to then have the start of a pot that they then had to add more to in order to buy the next one. There was never enough money in this to make a business out of it and get it going. And so I think that's what I want to really have a conversation with people about right at the very beginning. Why are you thinking of investing? Is it just that you've got some money sitting in the bank, you're not happy with the returns, you think that you'll make more money out of property, so you want to go and buy a house, but you've only ever got enough money for one, seriously only got enough money for one, then maybe owning just one property might not be the best use of your money. It might be a better idea to work with other people. And get into a development. It can be all sorts of things, and you've got to be very careful about your due diligence. It could be working together to do peer-to-peer on a project. It could be working in partnership with someone. It could be working with your family. There's all sorts of ways that you can go depending on your money.
You see things like that online, don't you, that you can put a certain amount of money. So say if you had £10,000, £20,000, you can put it into a larger pot and other people are involved with it. What do you think of those kind of things?
Well, one of the conversations we were having, I think, yesterday or this morning with Jay, was you were saying that ISAs, you can get 7 to 10%. Well, on that basis, you'd be better off putting your money in an ISA, because that would have been more safe for you. So,
and that isn't going to need a new roof or new windows.
To be honest, I have two minds when it comes to peer-to-peer lending and what you've just mentioned, being property ISAs. From a consumer point of view, I see two companies that do it very well. Okay. I'll not name them, but I see two companies that do it very well. And I look at their websites, and from a consumer, from my perspective, would I want to invest? I look at it and I think, yeah, this is great. This is really interesting. But then I put my financial advisor head back on, and I think, but why would I want to invest in that property ISA that invests in that one particular apartment in Manchester that supposedly has returned 8.2 over 3 years?
What would happen with things like that though if it needed it? So say if it was an apartment and it needed a new bathroom suite put in, if you'd put it into a property ISA compared to owning that property and you as a landlord would have to repair that bathroom, what would happen when your money's in the ISA?
Well, the costs come out of the pot, so that reduces your return. It's that simple. It's the same way if you were to open an ISA with a major investment company and it was invested into several different asset classes, the cost of running that ISA is taken away from the initial profit. And it's the same with the property ISA, which is why when I look at property ISA, I worry, because it's not just invested in one asset class, but it's invested very often in one particular property. So for me, it doesn't provide enough diversification. If you're going to invest in an ISA, invest in a proper equity ISA, which will be invested in various funds all over the world.
For me, it's about control. So what you're saying is you're only invested in one asset. That would be like the three of us getting together. So I've only met you in person today, although we've spoken on the phone. We don't know enough about one another and what we want to achieve. And even though I've known Jay for a good 10 years, I still wouldn't go straight today into, I tell you what, have you got some money? I've got some money. Should we go and buy a house? Yeah, we'd need to have a lot of conversations, even though we've known one another for 10 years, to make sure that our investing objectives aligned. Even within my own family, you know, one of the groups of houses I've got are with my sister. You think we're blood. That doesn't
mean you'd want the same thing.
No.
She might want it for 5 years, you might see it as 10 years.
Yes.
And going back to the peer-to-peer question, which is different obviously from the ISA, peer-to-peer again, there's a company which in fact we utilise as mortgage advisors.
Right, okay.
I'll not name them again, but they're excellent and they offer a fantastic service. So from a borrower point of view, it can be very good. But when I look at the returns they're offering to the investors, although they're very good returns, they're offering returns between 4 and 5%. And I look at that peer-to-peer lending, and then I look at another major peer-to-peer lender who is kind of the king of peer-to-peer lending in this country, and they lend to businesses. Well, again, the risk there is the same or less, and their returns are between 7 and 10%. So if you really want to get into peer-to-peer lending, then I wouldn't go down the peer-to-peer property road. I'd go down the more generalist peer-to-peer lending, where in the event you want your money back, you can get your money back as and when you want to. I think, to be honest with you, Heather, whenever you're investing in property...
Would you say then, sorry to interrupt you, would you say then, so say if you've put the money into peer-to-peer lending and you can get your money back easier, would you say that that's easier than just buying a property outright, and you might have to wait a year, 2 years, 3 years for a property to sell? For money to put it in and out of a property quicker, would you say that that would be a better way to go?
Well, like I said, I have to be completely honest with you. I think they're two completely different worlds.
Right.
I think if you're investing in an ISA or peer-to-peer lending, it's because you want to invest liquid funds, capital, into some sort of savings or investment style product or policy. Whereas when you're investing in actual bricks and mortar directly, where you're the owner of those bricks and mortar, you have to make a conscious decision where you wish to become a landlord. And those are two very different investment strategies. And in fact, investment strategies I think people should combine. I'm a landlord, as you've already mentioned,
yes.
But that doesn't mean I don't have ISA and investment bonds and pension. I believe that people should invest in various different strategies.
And diversify.
Yes,
it's like using
it's all about
different words. You
diversification.
use the word landlord. I'd go one step further and say investing in property, you're being a business owner, because each of those little houses is a business unit
True.
that's got to make
Right.
money.
True, you're all of
So,
those things.
so what
Yeah.
do you want to do with your money? Do you want to get fully embedded in this and become a property business owner, or have you got a bit of money and actually really what you want to do, you're using the word investment, I'd say be a saver. You know,
Right.
are you thinking short term with your money, or are you thinking long term with your money? Are you thinking that you just want to put some money over there, not worry about it for 12 months, and at the end of it, hopefully you'll have made some profit? Or are you actually thinking that you've got some money, you're going to make it work for you, and you're going to pay attention to it? You're going to treat it like an employee and make it work for you, and when it's not working hard enough, you're going to give it a slap and pull it into
I
line.
think the last point I want to make on that topic is a lot of people don't want to invest their money, and I fully understand why, in some sort of savings vehicle or investment vehicle or peer-to-peer lending, some sort of ISA, where all they receive is something on screen or a piece of paper telling them
Or
how
it's
much
more
their money
tangible
is.
if you've actually got the bricks and
Exactly.
mortar and
They
you can
want
walk
the bricks
into
and
it.
mortar of the tangible investment.
So
And
that
then-
would depend on the person that's investing and what they see as value for money then.
yes.
Which
There's
brings
a-
us back to your question. You'd say to me, what would you say to someone who wants to invest in property? Exactly
want?
this conversation. Why are you looking to invest? And if what you want is a little bit of a return for your money, which isn't a great deal of money, and you don't want to have any involvement in it, actually what you want to do is increase your capital like a saver would.
Completely.
So then what you need to be doing is having a conversation with a financial advisor in the first place to actually look at the range of things, which is why we work together.
Well, we can build up capital over
Yeah.
time.
But then the other side is if you have got a more significant pot and you're prepared to put some of your mental time, energy to it, then maybe investing in property is a good idea for you. We'd still need to have a conversation about what your overall strategy was, and then you'd still need to have the conversation with the financial advisor, because at the end of it, you're still going to need mortgages of some form of lending at the end of it to make a plan. Yeah.
If someone came to you then and said, here's that £100,000 that I've saved up, I want to put it into property, what would be your recommendations?
Okay, so at this point, assuming we were happy that they were going to invest all of that 100 in property, directly into property. Well, my recommendation might be different from Vicky, but if somebody said to me, how many properties can I purchase, let's say in Greater Manchester or the northwest of England, that have a decent rental yield, that have a good potential for long-term growth, I would say, well, with £100,000, you've got yourself 3 or 4 good-sized deposits there on properties between £80,000 and £100,000.
So you'd say spread it out rather than...
Oh yes.
more
I wouldn't buy
into
one
property?
house.
No, I'd spread it out.
Why buy one house whenever you could buy 3 or 4? If that house goes up by, well, let's say capital growth over, let's be conservative, over 10 years is 30%. If you own one house, well, then you've made 30% on one house. But if you own 4 houses, well, then you've made 30% on 4 houses.
Completely.
So, yeah.
It's called leverage, and it always makes sense. Whenever I speak to clients who've got enough money to buy a house outright, I simply sit them down and show them the maths, that even though you are paying for a mortgage, and so the mortgage then has to come out of the rent, theoretically reducing your profit, 4 smaller pieces of profit always ends up being more than one big
larger piece of
yeah,
profit.
it just does. The maths just works that
How
way.
much deposit do you think should be put down per property then?
Well, the market is conditioned now since the banking collapse, where the market has become very used to a 25% deposit, whereas pre-2008 banking collapse, it was conditioned to a 10 to 15% deposit. 10% was always too small. There are lenders, many buy-to-let specialists now, who will run with a 20% deposit. You will pay a little bit more on those rates, but I have investors that are more than happy to pay a little bit more, particularly when they're buying cheaper property, because running with a 20% deposit allows them maybe to buy that one extra house.
The extra property, and then they've got the extra money going
That's
in.
it. But as a rule of
Makes
thumb,
sense.
the market's conditioned at 25%. So you
But
buy
I
a
would-
£100,000 house, £25,000 deposit. Sorry.
I would take a more cautious approach and always look to put down a 25% deposit, mainly because you're reducing your exposure, the amount of loan that you've got out.
And your rate.
Interest rates are notoriously low at the moment.
They are.
So yes, you'd get a better rate to start off with, but also what you've got to look at, and this is the mistake. So when I first started investing in property, I was introduced to properties that I could buy where I would basically pay £3,000, which was the fee to the guy to get me the house in the first place. Nothing in terms of the deposit. The deposit was going to be funded and all this sort of stuff. And then when you look at the maths, so I put no money in other than this £3,000 fee, but my mortgage cost more than the rent on the property, and the house was going to cost me, or the flats were going to cost me, depending on whether it was houses or flats, were going to cost me somewhere in the region of £100 to £300 a month each. And this was touted as being a good investment, because look, you see, you don't have to have a lot of savings. What you can do is just pay £3,000 fee to me and then just top up your mortgage every
You might
month.
have to cover your back as well, though, in case we don't go. Well, what happens if
Which
we
is
have another crash?
Well, I'm
But
very
that's why
happy to say
everybody in those
I'm very
days
happy
went
to say
under.
that those days are gone.
No, and I never bought a property like that,
Yeah.
because how does that work?
It doesn't work.
No, but I had friends of those days who bought 10 of these properties, and there's a specific company that we can mention and that we won't, and anybody who's listening who knows about this will know who it is that we're talking about. And they had 10 flats, and they're going, oh, how many properties have you got? I've got 10 properties.
With no equity in them.
But they had no equity. They already bought in effectively to negative equity. As soon as the interest rates went up, they were feeding their mortgages, and these mortgages went up and up and up, not from 100 to 300, and then they lost the lot. But what you're forgetting is they never owned 10 properties. They had 10 flats in Manchester at £250,000 debt per house. That's a phenomenal amount of
Huge
debt
amount.
with
And
nothing in
150
return, and you've paid £3,000 per property for the privilege of it. So it was all the wrong way round. And
It
what
was
I
a direct result of too much American money in the system.
yeah.
But those days are gone.
Yes.
Those days are
But
gone.
that's
There's an
what-
awful lot of regulation in the market now, which is a good thing.
yeah.
The rental market is up more than it's been in 50 years, both here and in America.
But you still have to be cautious. You've got to be around for 10 years to see that growth in capital, and you don't want to have to be topping up your mortgage in that period. You don't want to be sweating. You don't want to be sleeping, not sleeping at night. You want to be in a position where if you're going to invest in property, of course, you're always going to get the odd challenge pop up. You're
So
going to
it
be
is more of a
prepared
long
for it.
game. If somebody said, here's
Yeah.
the money I want to invest, I want to be in and out within 5 years, it wouldn't be. You'd want to see somebody putting it in for a longer game.
Well, if we
I
take
don't
it
know
back,
that's buy to let so much.
if we take it back to mortgages, whenever you wish to purchase a home or a flat that you're going to live in, affordability is based on your salary, or if you're self-employed, your profits, and perhaps your partner's profits, and that's great. That way, the lenders get to make sure they don't lend you too much money. They don't give you too much rope. When it comes to the buy-to-let sector, it's somewhat similar. Affordability is not based on your personal income. It's based on either the existing, if it's currently let, or the potential rental income of the property. Now, until recently, those rules were relatively relaxed. They were incredibly relaxed 10 years ago, and they're becoming more and more conservative. Now, the Prudential Regulation Authority brought new guidelines into...
It's only to protect those people, isn't
Absolutely,
it? Yeah,
Yes.
to protect
It's
people.
reduced affordability. So as a rule of thumb, this time last year, if you had have come to me and said, Jay, I'd like to buy a property, it's worth £1,000 a month rental income. How much can I get on a buy-to-let mortgage? I would have said, well, Heather, around £192,000.
Okay.
But today, if you ask me that same question, and you want a very competitive, top-of-the-market mortgage with one of the major high street lenders that provide buy-to-let mortgages, I would be saying, Heather, around £150,000 to £151,500, depending on the type of property. So as you can see, affordability has become significantly more conservative. Now, why
It
is
has
that?
to be though, doesn't it, to protect people,
Exactly.
to protect the people that are living there as well, because
Yes.
if they're going to be turfed out because you've had your house repossessed because you've not been able to pay for it, it's
But
creating
nobody
further
wants that.
problems,
No,
isn't it?
absolutely.
The lenders don't want the property. The lenders want the landlord to pay the mortgage, which allows the landlord to...
They're in the
then
business
continue.
of lending money and making money, not
Absolutely.
becoming landlords themselves.
This is a good thing. Overall, it's a good thing.
So what's
But
the distance?
oh, sorry, I was going to say, existing landlords who are in it are now moaning about the increased affordability because it means that they've got to change their business model. But if we're back to that first person looking to invest, you won't know all the history, forget all the history, forget everything we've said. Just think that when you go to your financial advisor and he tells you what the affordability criteria is, or she, so sorry, it's only because you're sitting there, I did the he. Absolutely,
Some of my
financial
colleagues would be
advisor,
bitterly
or she's,
offended.
I know, I'm so sorry. She, we're going to refer to women only from now on and just forget you.
Fair enough.
That actually your lady financial advisor will turn around and say to you how much you can afford. It's good for you and it's going to protect you in the long run. And if you can afford it, invest. And if you can't afford it, then
Don't.
it's not right for you right now.
No,
You know, that's it.
it's not for everyone.
No.
But what other fees should people think about as well? Because, as we said, when you watch programmes on TV, it's not always as clean cut as what it seems. Just because a house costs this, you've also got the additional payments. What extra things do people have to
Well,
pay?
I'll
as
run with
landlords?
this if you don't mind. As a rule, because this is the question I'm asked by a lot of first-time landlords who have money they've decided to invest. Let's use the example of a £100,000 house. If you're placing down a £25,000 deposit, that's your 25%.
Yep.
You then need your stamp duty, which is 3% at £100,000, so that's £3,000, and you've got your legal costs and your mortgage costs. So call it £5,000 for stamp duty, legals and mortgage, and you won't be disappointed. You'll hopefully have a little bit left over. So if you want to buy a £100,000 property, as a landlord today, I would suggest you need £30,000 to invest.
Okay.
And then I'd add money to that. So when I work with my clients and I help them invest in property, so some of my clients want me to do all the work effectively. On top of that, you've got to bear in mind that on the day that you complete, and we'll just keep it simple, that on the day that you complete, you take the keys and that's when you can start doing your renovation to bring it up to letting standards. You may have to put in new kitchens and bathrooms, or you may just simply paint or do carpets. You've got to fund all of that. You've then got to be paying the mortgage while that goes on. You've then got to line up with your letting agent so that when the refurbishment is finished, the letting agent can have tenants ready to move in.
It's so important though to consider, isn't it? Because people think, okay, this is what the yield is, this is
Yep.
what it's getting back. But if you've actually got to do work in the property,
Yep.
or even if it doesn't rent out straight away, just because we have, is it 4.5 million people at the moment in the UK that are renting privately, just because the people out there and people do want to rent doesn't mean it will rent out
There's
straight
one there
away.
ready for you. Yes. Hopefully, if
So-
you've picked correctly, then there will be demand, because that's the whole point. That's another aspect of it, getting your
This is the
market
kind of
right.
information that people can get when they come to
Yeah,
you.
but then, you know, I would always budget for a minimum of 3 months of paying the mortgage for myself before I get a tenant in, hoping again, like Jay said, or my lady financial broker if I had one.
Right.
But I would be able to get all of this sorted. So I've got 3 months rent to pay, I've got the cost of the refurbishment to pay, and you always need to put in a contingency on top of that, because there's always something that comes up or gets missed, or some extra that you would like to do. So you've got that to cover for. You've then got your letting agent is going to be getting your tenant for you. So your letting agent will charge you a finder's fee to find the tenant. Then it depends on the tenant as to whether they pay rent in advance or rent in arrears. Then you've got gas certificates, electrical certificates. Hopefully it comes with an energy performance certificate, EPC. What else is there? I'm sure there's
I don't know,
something
you've
else
put
I've
me
forgotten.
off buying any more properties.
No, but you know all
Vicki
these.
makes a good point. £30,000 gets you through the front door,
Yeah.
but it doesn't necessarily get the property let successfully.
You
Yeah.
have to consider all the extra things for it to be a successful investment.
Which
And
is
I'd
why
look
I
for
would-
another 10 to 12,000, 10 to 15,000 even, on top of that, depending on the condition of the property.
For a property that requires work.
Yeah.
I couldn't agree with you more.
Yeah.
For a first-time landlord, unless they're very versed in property ways, where perhaps they've got a background in trade or they've got an exceptionally good support network ready to go, I think they should.
You wouldn't suggest doing too much work.
I think a first-time landlord should probably try and find a property that doesn't require a lot of work doing to
completely
do.
agree
Certainly a
with that.
first-time landlord. Landlords that are a little bit more experienced or that have the right support network to do the tangible work that needs doing, well, that's different. Then you can potentially add a lot of value.
So back to the financial side though. So if somebody's gone, okay, took all these points on board, still want to invest. What's the difference then between going and getting a mortgage for a property you're going to live in and one that you're going to let out?
Okay, well, I'll take this one, Vicki. So whenever you're looking for a residential mortgage, you're going to a lender, whether it be a bank or a building society, and you're asking them for money in order to house you and your family. They have a moral and ethical responsibility, because they were given licenses by the government maybe tens, maybe hundreds of years ago, to provide citizens and residents within this country to have their family life. Those mortgages will be at the lowest rate that those lenders can afford to provide them at, because they've promised that they would do that, whether they're a building society. We talk about Nationwide, for example, the largest building society, helped build the country. Why does it exist? Because people just wanted to own their own home. They have a moral, as I say, and ethical responsibility to keep those rates to a minimum. However, whenever you're speculating on property as a buy-to-let landlord, it's effectively a commercial transaction.
You're asking for something completely different.
Precisely. You're speculating on property. You decided you wanted to make some money by investing in property. Fair enough, it's residential property, but it's still a commercial transaction.
It's still a business.
So then,
Yeah,
exactly.
so-
So the lenders want to make more money on it, because a lot of lenders, in fact, make more money on their buy-to-let side of their operation, so that they can keep their residential operation to a minimum in terms of their costing. So
to
there's
help pay
always
their
going
own
to
residential property.
precisely. So there's always going to be a gap. So the interest rates on a buy-to-let property should always be higher. The arrangement fees should always be higher, and that's simply because the lenders recognise, well, we've no moral or ethical requirement,
Duty to- yeah.
to help you house your family. You're investing in property. You've decided to be a property magnate, and good luck to you. But and hope you make lots of money. But I hope you don't mind us making some money as well. And that's the way the banks look at it.
Everyone has to make a living.
I think that's fair. I think it's fair. Yeah.
So Vicki, you've got 3 books. As I said, I've read one of them about making property for the next generation, and in that you gave some fantastic insights into, there was a one way you said about buying 8 houses, an example. If you bought 8 houses and then after a while you sold 3 of them, it could potentially pay for the other 5, and then all the money coming in would all be money that you were making rather than
strategy.
paying off.
Yeah.
Is there any other good tips that you could recommend or point people in the direction of for your books? What will they find in there?
Goodness, well, I think it's about every single person being a completely different shade of beige, or, from the continuum from black to white, all the shades of grey in between. Every single person is going to come in with a different mix of resources. Some people are going to have more money than time. Some people are going to have more time than money. Some people are going to have, as you said, the trades, the knowledge that they can bring in. It could be financial knowledge or building style knowledge, or it could be marketing knowledge, anything. And that's going to help shape the overall strategy that you have. Why do you want to invest is the first thing. So what are we looking to create for you? Is it additional monthly income because you actually need it, and that would make you more conservative and focus very much on getting good cash flow? Absolutely. And then the other side of it is, it would be nice for you to have some extra monthly, but you don't need the monthly cash flow. But of course, as I said to you right at the beginning, you've got to be able to keep paying these mortgages out of the business money rather than out of your own personal pocket. That
so it's
would
thinking of it as a
different
business rather
strategy.
than thinking of it as an additional house that you're
It is,
buying.
and
Yeah,
Vicky's right.
I think so.
And whenever anybody wants to invest, whether it be properties or whether it be stocks and shares, for example, I have to ask them, well, why are you investing? Are you investing for income? Are you investing for growth? Are you investing for the combination of two? Now, Vicky touched on something which is very interesting on your second scenario. So somebody who doesn't require an income immediately, but is perhaps investing for the long term. So I've just described myself. So whenever I first started investing in property, I have a day job, and thankfully I make enough money to pay my bills. So any profit that I make on my properties, once I reached a point where I felt I have enough properties now. So now that I have these properties, I would now like to increase my equity stake. How does that happen? Well, hopefully the values go up. But wouldn't it be nice to reduce the debt gradually? Because of course, on buy-to-let mortgages, the vast majority of them are interest only. So I would say to people that are thinking about taking on a couple of properties and they don't require maximum monthly cash flow yield, to overpay the mortgage, because that allows you to reduce the debt gradually, which increases your equity stake, which is particularly good.
Which makes more sense long run.
Of course,
and
in
reduces
long
the
term.
risk.
Yeah,
Indeed,
completely.
of course. So if you're, let's say you're in your mid-30s and you want to start investing in property in your mid-20s, don't worry about today. You don't need that property today. The idea is a long term. Very often they want some income in retirement. And that was a great strategy where, let's say you own 8 properties, sell 5, and hopefully there's enough money left over to own the other 3 completely debt-free and unencumbered. Wonderful. But on top of that, why not overpay the mortgage on all 8?
As you've been going along.
If the rent allows it.
Yeah.
If there's enough cash flow on the rent where you don't need the income, then overpay the mortgages down, because one day whenever you reach your mid-60s or whenever you want to retire, there'll be lots more equity in those properties.
So what does the future hold for you both? So Vicky, you have 3 books out at the minute. Have you got any more in the pipeline?
Yes, definitely. There's definitely going to be another book this year.
Oh, fantastic.
I think it's going to be sort of taking it up from property now and actually just looking at thinking the way we think about money and everything. I mean, we're so stuck in doing what our parents did, and they're stuck in doing what the grandparents did, and I've now got a granddaughter. I know it's hard to believe, she's 1.
Congratulations.
But she's,
Yes,
thank you,
congratulations.
she's going to do a job that we haven't invented yet. You know, and
The world is
therefore,
constantly
Automation.
changing.
but therefore that idea that my grandparents got whatever education they got, but with the whole idea of going out and getting a job because they wanted to get some money together to buy a house, and houses then, you know, maybe cost less than £10,000 in the old
So
days.
we do have to keep moving with the market
Absolutely.
and what is relevant at the time.
We
and
don't
how
even know
we-
where Amelia's going to live. We don't know where her job is going to be. So why would she want to move into my house? Why am I thinking about my house as her inheritance? So we released money from our house and from our other houses right at the very beginning in order to invest in a portfolio, because the portfolio will be her inheritance. Then she can choose to live wherever she likes and benefit from that income.
I think
It's a
that's also
legacy.
important
Yeah.
though, isn't it? Apart from next generation and things like that, but also in our current moment, you don't have to buy a property to live in. You can live somewhere and rent and buy somewhere else to be allowed to be able to afford to do that, because sometimes you want to live somewhere and you can't necessarily afford to do that.
No, but this is contrary to what the government is touting. They're trying to make us a country full of homeowners, and what they're forgetting is that that's the history. You know, the Englishman's home was his castle. That's all truly
But then you've got
historic
to think
stuff.
on the
That's
other
not
side.
the generation for the young people
Places
now.
like Spain and Ireland and things like that, they have a really, really high percentage of people owning the houses.
Germany too has the other way round.
Germany,
Germany,
yeah, Germany is completely the other way round, and yet Germany now is investing in Manchester in particular more than ever. Now the pound's weaker, it's making it more relevant to invest in our services and our products and buy our property over in the UK, because they're getting more money for their euro at the moment.
But wouldn't it be nicer if, instead of all the foreigners coming into this country and buying our properties, and obviously I come from London, so there's a whole hoo-ha about the state of the London market being stimulated by foreign investors because of the
It's quite
value.
interesting though that people from Germany are buying here,
Yeah,
yet
but
they're
why
actually
aren't-
renting in their own country.
But why aren't we buying
They see an
here? Because
opportunity
they understand
here
it.
that doesn't exist in their own country, because their mortgage system doesn't work in the same.
It's different,
way.
isn't
No.
it? It's low rent.
But we
and-
could be benefiting. We could be not only benefiting from that income, but we could be supplying decent houses to our local people. We had a conversation a bit earlier about what you did at Christmas and about giving gifts to neighbours that we understood maybe weren't as fortunate as us, and that's a great thing to do. But why aren't we, if we're fortunate to live in a home, whether we own it or rent it, that doesn't matter, but if we're fortunate enough to live in a decent home, why can't we be doing something as a country and as individuals to provide more decent homes? The number of people I've walked past that are homeless
I think it comes
here
down
in
It's
Manchester,
horrific.
It's horrific.
I think
And
we
London
should bear in
too.
mind it does come down to stability a lot. If we had better regulation when it came to tenancy agreements and people could sign very happily a 36-month tenancy agreement, it would give them the stability they want in order to put down roots and have their family in their rented
and think
home.
of the place as a home.
Yes, because it is their home.
Yeah.
I say to every one of my
we
tenants,
do need to do more.
I said to every one of my
help
tenants,
with
which I would classify as a family unit style tenant with 3-bed semi-detached house or something like that, I say, as long as you pay your rents every month, this is your home. That's it. I don't want you to think of it as
So what's your
not
standard
your home.
contract that you actually put forward then as a landlord?
It depends what the tenant wants, and it depends on the tenant. So my properties in Manchester City Centre, who are to students, tend to be 6 months at a time, maybe a
Because
couple
that works for them.
couple of friends sharing together. Whereas my longest standing tenant has been there 8 years, and I joked to him last week. I said, "It's about time you bought this house off me," because he's been there for
They're the kind of tenants as a landlord that you want, though, that you know.
Oh, absolutely,
Absolutely.
absolutely.
Gonna be there.
Because they take care of the house, they treat it with respect,
But
they
it-
consider it to be their
But
home.
in Germany and Poland and the Czech Republic, for that matter, this is the sort of tenants they have. They move into a home and there's no kitchen in the house. The tenant puts the kitchen in because they have the
They
stability.
see the
to
worth
do
though
that.
because there's lower rents
They've
and
made
they
their
do
own
get
home.
longer contracts,
Much longer.
and it is their home.
Our contracts aren't long enough in this
No,
country.
but we've got a situation where I've got some properties that are on 3-year leases with housing associations, and they were the original houses that I bought. I've tried to speak to Jay about getting them remortgaged, and the lenders would not lend to me on a 3-year lease with a housing association where I am guaranteed the rental income for 3 years because they're thinking about how they will take over the property if
And
I
you're-
fail to pay.
And you're right. You're right. However, the mood is changing amongst the lenders.
good, about
Only this
time.
week, a major bank in the UK and Europe, for that matter, announced that they will now accept tenancy agreements up to 36 months because they're recognising
time.
they need to start supporting the market that wants that. There's a
I think
desire in the
more
market
needs to
for
be
that.
done too for people that are entitled to housing benefit, and lots of landlords won't rent to people who are on housing benefit. I think more needs to be done with that because if you're actually going to get the payment but directly from the council, if more is done that way and they don't get the money as a
But that's
middleman.
what they've changed.
That's
They've
what
changed.
needs to change
My
back, though,
entire
doesn't it?
portfolio was built on housing people on benefits, particularly single mums, because that's what I was. When my marriage broke up, I was a single mum with 2 little girls. I ended up moving into the back bedroom of my parents' house, and the only way that I got out of that was because there was a landlord out there via a housing
Who would rent
association.
to you.
That landlord gave his house to the housing association, and the housing association supported me to move into that. And I've gone from being on benefits to being in a position where I own
I
a
think we
portfolio
need to do more
because
to
that was
support
there.
people and to build confidence
But the
back in
government
people.
put out universal credit, and universal credit gives money directly, theoretically, to empower our people
I don't
who
think
are
it
on
should be done. I think it
benefits.
should go straight to the landlord, and then the landlord
yeah.
knows they're getting the money.
It's been
It's
a-
guaranteed. It's more guaranteed than
Yeah.
someone who might lose their job next month that's paying for it out of their own money.
Absolutely.
It was getting a lot better. 10 years ago, it was getting a lot better, and more landlords were not putting no DSS on their lists, and then they changed it where the tenant received the rental income, and unfortunately, in instances like that, the tenant receives the rental income, and
I think
maybe
it should go
fa-
straight to the landlord.
through no fault of their own. They've
No.
maybe got other bills to pay. They've
Well,
got children
absolutely,
to pay
but you're
for.
not teaching people how to do high-level financial management,
'Cause if the money's
which is
there
what
in
they
the
have to
bank,
do.
If you've gone out and something's happened to the house, or not necessarily the house, but you've had to pay for something that you wouldn't necessarily account for, and you've not worked it into your money for that month. If you've then got the money sitting in your account, you're obviously going to spend it. You're not going to go out and get a loan, are you? Whereas if the money went direct to the landlord, they would then have to look somewhere else for that money, and they wouldn't end up in the problem that they are.
It takes the temptation away. It takes it, yeah.
It
But
does.
in the real world, I do fully understand why single mums maybe get their payment in that week or universal credit.
It's
or tax
affecting
credits.
everybody because of what
Yeah.
some people have done, where is it wouldn't. If the money went straight to the landlord, we'd take out this problem. We'd be able to support the community more. We'd be able to do more to put people in better houses where they could raise their children. And then if they were happy at home, they might then go back to college. They might then get back to work.
Absolutely,
It puts everything
absolutely,
back
and
on-
that's the whole
back on the
reason I
ladder,
got
doesn't
into
it?
investing was for that reason.
I think just going back to a point you made a few minutes ago in relation to people who realise that perhaps they're living in a place where where they can't purchase, and London's very popular. So one of my oldest clients, one of my longest standing clients, I should say, she'd kill me if I said oldest.
Quite rightly too.
She's only 42. She started investing.
2 years young.
She started investing in property when she was around 31 years of age. She still lives with her mother today in North London and is very successful in her own job, but would never be able to afford a place by herself in Islington in London. But she has a portfolio of 9 properties, a very healthy portfolio of 9 properties, because she recognised many years ago, well, I should be buying in the north where properties are cheaper, and I can place down a deposit on that 60,000-70,000 pound house, and through time she's been able to build that portfolio up. So just because people feel that they can't buy the home that they want to go and live in, it doesn't mean they can't get on the property ladder. It just means they might need to become a landlord in a cheaper area.
In a different area. One of my friends at the moment lives and works in London because of work, and they're buying in Wales and going to rent it out because they see the fact that they need to get on the property ladder now, because if they wait another 10 years and they might then move out of London, it's going to be too late then, or not necessarily too late, but they're going to be in a worse position than if they actually
I still think there's a little pressure in there for them to then end up owning their own home. The client that Jay just described had a slightly different nuance to the friends that you just described, if you don't mind my saying. They can have that portfolio in Wales and not have to go and move into it and not have to sell it in order to carry on. If you have something that is a series of little business units, all these houses that are creating you an income, you can use that income, even though you don't need it now, to then choose to upscale where you rent and rent somewhere you love.
That's true.
I have a friend who lives and works and runs a very successful business in London, and he says there is no way I'm ever going to buy a property. Mathematically, it's more sense for him to continue to rent. He does other things with his money, but he would never invest in London.
It's not right for everybody though, is it?
Nope.
What's right for one is not always for others.
But if we had that job security there, none of this would be so much of an issue. And I think the big mistake, and it started with the last government, he who will not be named Mr. Osborne, don't spit, it's fine, we're okay. But I mean, why was there just this shift into making us the bad guys?
You know why? Because the landlords as a percentage of the population are in fact quite a small percentage.
Correct.
But first time buyers and next time buyers trying to get a foot on the ladder and trying to move up the ladder.
Yeah, there's more voting.
But also
so I understand
they're getting stood on though.
of
If your property is going through and you're in a chain, you can end up paying the stamp duty, the extra stamp duty, because currently, for like maybe even for a couple of weeks of the year, you own more than one property.
That's
so
true,
people are getting burnt all over the place by the changes.
They give you time to claim that back.
Do they?
Yeah, the reality is they give you up to 36 months to claim that back in the event you sell your home. Because I have instances like that where people are stuck in a chain. They wish to purchase a property.
So at one point you own 2 properties and you're paying a higher rate of stamp duty.
And then you claim it back.
And you claim it back.
The stamp duty was particularly ill-conceived from the point of view of parents that wanted to guarantor or wanted to help children get on the ladder. It's the moment you name that parent on the mortgage and the title, it creates a much larger stamp duty bill. So it overnight it almost killed guarantor mortgages.
Yeah.
So
that stopped them doing exactly what they wanted.
To get the market moving.
But also, if we just change the thinking completely and stop
Which
trying to force all these,
about.
and stop forcing everybody to own their own home.
True.
Because I mean, if I consider what my daughter has done. So Charlie's here with us today. So she started off, she went to university in Kingston. So if I'd been a typical parent, I would have gone and bought a flat in Kingston for her to live in. It's an expensive part of the country. She stays there for 3 years. She leaves. What do? I either have this portfolio with random houses all over the country, or I sell it. When I sell it, I incur costs and fees. Great, the estate agent gets a chunk, the broker gets a chunk, the lender gets a chunk, because I might be selling it and be caught and tied up in certain fees. So all of that is nonsense. It's not good business sense. Then we move forward another section, and where does she go next? So then she comes back towards home. So I might have sold that one and then I bought her another property in West London. Now she lives in Slovakia. So do I go and buy her a house in Slovakia? And then when she comes back, will she live in the UK or will she live in Canada? It's all irrelevant. Why don't we just consider that young people will go through a period of their lives, quite probably up until their mid-30s or mid-40s, where they, through circumstances, relationships, work, children, no children, study, everything, will move around the country, because we have that level of movability that we never had when, I was looking to work. Exactly. So rent. The fact that you don't buy your first house until you're 35 or 40, I don't see that as a problem. You're not settled, you're not stable.
Unfortunately, there's a lot of peer pressure.
Media pressure.
Somebody's friend purchases a property,
Yeah.
they want to purchase a
I
property.
know.
It's also seen as
But
an
why
achievement,
don't
though,
you
isn't
turn
it?
around and
It's a milestone in your life.
Something to
own
tick
your-
off.
It's something tangible.
And but you could have bought a house. You could have bought the start of a portfolio sooner than your friend, because while your friend was sitting over there saving up the money to buy this particular house, which is right for them right now, but won't be right for them in 5 years' time, and then
They
they're
could
going
have
to sell it and
invested
lose
sooner.
money and everything else. You could have been investing sooner, and by the time they move on to their second property, you could have 3 or 4 properties in your own
To be
portfolio.
fair, I am seeing that. I'm seeing people making lifestyle choices in Greater Manchester where they want to live in Manchester, they work in Manchester, they rent a nice apartment in Manchester, but they want to be on the property ladder for as an investment. So they'll purchase a property in perhaps a slightly lower value area in Manchester.
More
Purchase that.
affordable.
Absolutely, and they have no intention of moving into it.
No.
But at least they have a tangible investment there that will hopefully appreciate over time, produces a rental income, and who knows, maybe they'll add to it.
Yeah.
So there's no doubt about it. That particular sector of the populace is increasing. People that recognise I either can't or don't want to buy a property because where I want to live, it's too expensive to purchase, but I can purchase elsewhere.
And I think that's really good to remember, isn't it? So lots of food for thought. Thank you so much for coming in today. So if you head over to Media Soundwave on our website, www.mediasoundwave.co.uk, you will go on the Meet the Expert section and you will find more information about Vicki, Jay, and links to their work and where you will find Vicki's books and anything else that they're doing. So head over to the website, click subscribe whilst you are there, and don't miss any of our future episodes. As I said, thank you guys for coming in. Thank you to
Pleasure.
everybody involved in the show. Thank you to Hotel Gotham for having us here. Thanks to the crew, and thank you for tuning in. See you next time here on Media Soundwave.